What's going on, everybody? Today we're going to be going over the biggest mistake keeping people fat. So as you can see in both of these photos, I used to be a pretty big fat ass myself. I think in this photo I was about 190 pounds. So I wasn't at my heaviest. My heaviest is 215 pounds, but this photo was 195. In this photo I am about 156 pounds. So as you can see, I have lost over 60 pounds in my entire transformation. But in this photo itself, this is about a what did I say, 195, and then this is 155. That's about a 40-pound difference. And the way I did this was by moving. That is what people are usually missing in their fat loss journey, and that's going to have to be movement. I see way too many people make this mistake because most, specifically gym bros, most of these gym bros, they're making the mistake of starving themselves. People will look at their total calories burned without moving, and they'll see like, oh crap, my BMR is about 1,800 calories. I want to lose weight, so I gotta eat 1,300 calories. Or if they're even more aggressive, they'll be like, I have to eat 800 calories, which is like really insane to me. I have no idea why people even do this because you're just gonna starve max. You're gonna lower your testosterone. You're gonna feel like shit, and your physique is just gonna look like ass at the end of the day. Like that's exactly what I was doing during this time period of my life. I was just trying to starve max because I thought that like, oh, the less that I eat, the more weight I'm gonna lose, and I ended up just looking like shit. Like I have these like, little feminine hips, like little breathable hips and stuff, and I look at like a puffy face. I felt like shit. This was, I think I took, oh yeah, I did take a testosterone test around this time for my blood work, and I was about 300 nanograms per deciliter. Now with this physique, I am in the 800s. So that is that is double the testosterone. And that's pretty big improvement. I feel great here. I felt like shit here. I mean, nothing more to be said there. The biggest thing that I changed that led from me going from this to this was just moving more. So I never tracked my steps here. I think I started to track my steps during this time period, but I was only getting about 8,000 per day. Here and currently now, I am getting about 20,000 steps per day. And it feels amazing because I can just increase my calorie budget. I can eat like so much more food than I could here. So now that I can eat more food, I can eat more foods that are gonna optimize my testosterone. So like I have more room to eat more steaks, more room to eat eggs, all these foods that are going to give me healthy fats and cholesterol. I can fit them in without feeling like, oh, I'm going over my calorie budget or I'm not going to lose weight. you know so when I say movement, exactly what do I mean by movement? I quite literally mean just moving your body around, but there are different types of movement. So down here I have a list of different types of movements that can help you lose weight. We have walking, sprints, sports, and long distance running. And there's obviously going to be more than this, but these are going to be like the most common ones that I see people do. And obviously, walking is going to be the best. Why? Because it's a low cortisol activity. You do not require to like really push your body to the limit in order to do this. And sprints do require you to push your body to the limit. And it's also a beneficial cortisol spike. So, like, you're going to like go all out on these sprints, but you're going to end up feeling good after because you're not like prolonging the feeling of like high cortisol. Whereas long distance running, you're gonna feel like shit after. You're gonna feel hungry. You're like, it's just not fun. They're like, look at all the cross country runners. Look at their physiques. They look like skeletons. Their faces look just dead. Like it's just not good. Long distance running, don't do this. Like sure, it will burn calories quicker than walking, but when you long distance run, you keep your cortisol spiked for a long period of time, which is not beneficial for you at all. Not only that, but in order to be able to run long distances, you need a lot of fuel, which is why you see a lot of long distance runners always eating a bunch of carbs. So they're doing all that running, but realistically, they're just kind of making up for all the food that they ate. So from a weight loss standpoint, this one's gonna be like disgusting. It's just stay away from long distance running. But walking, on the other hand, walking does not require any sort of energy. You can do this on a bad day, on a good day. You can do this at any time of the day, and it's gonna feel great. You're gonna go on a little walk. You're gonna have more steady energy, especially if you're walking in the sun. I love to walk in the sun shirtless. That's how I was able to get this crazy tan. I was pretty pale over here. Now I'm like way more tan because I walk in the sun for at least an hour a day. This is also going to be very beneficial for your testosterone because you're going to be getting a bunch of vitamin D and you're going to have more consistent stress levels. You're not going to be overly stressed from like if you were running. So walking is going to be the best. It also doesn't require any fuel, if you know what I mean by that. So long distance running requires fuel. If you want to be able to run a long distance without feeling like complete ass, you're going to need to fuel your body. You're going to need to eat a bunch of carbs. That's why you see all the runners like they smack down these like giant Rice Krispies treats. For walking, you don't have to do that. Whenever you walk, it's think of it like passive fat loss. The more you walk, the more calories you burn, but no fuel is required. You don't have to eat before a walk. You don't have to rehydrate yourself after a walk. Unless you're walking like in the super hot sun. Then sometimes I'll have like some orange juice to quench my thirst and stuff and like rehydrate. But generally speaking, walking just requires no effort. It's just effortless fat loss. So you need to make this one a staple in your routine. Sprints and sports also kind of have like they're both in the same category, depending on the type of sport, of course. For example, I do like wrestling, I do jujitsu, I do boxing, I do Muay Thai, I do MMA. And so both of these are going to be kind of similar in a way because sprints require you to go all out, for short periods of time. Combat sports can be similar because when you're sparring someone, like you're like at a consistent pace until let's say they leave you an opening, you go for a shot for a wrestling takedown. That at that point in that period of time, it's like a sprint because you're putting all of your force into that action that you're doing. So these are also going to be great, but they're not going to be the best for fat loss because they do require fuel. They require fuel and they require rehydration. After a grappling session in jiu-jitsu, I'm dehydrated as fuck. I need to have carbs. I need like a potato. I need like my pomegranate juice. I need fruits. I need honey. I also beforehand too, I gotta have a high carb meal so that I'm actually fueled for that workout. So sports they're gonna be like a little lower on the list, but they're still great because the more movement that you do, the more body fat you're gonna burn. So if your goal is mainly fat loss and not performance, you can do like sprints and sports all the time if you enjoy it, but just try to not overly fuel on carbs. And a lot of people are like, they're not gonna like that advice because they're like, oh, well, I want to perform at my best. I'm an athlete. Totally fine. I totally get it. In that case, fuel yourself as much as you need. But if the goal is purely fat loss, try to fuel yourself with less carbs so that you increase your calorie budget. But overall, out of all these on the list, walking is going to be the absolute best. It requires zero carbs, zero fuel, zero rehydration unless you're in the sun. So overall, walking is going to be the best one here. I also did some calculations for you guys over here. So in this example, we have a 200-pound male. His daily BMR is around 2,000 calories. Obviously, this is like kind of like it's very we don't know exactly what their BMR is, but this is just a good example because I asked ChatGPT like, "Yo, how many calories does a 200-pound man like burn just doing nothing?" And it said around like 1900 to 2100. So that's where I got this number from. Same with all the steps and stuff, right? So like 10,000 steps, it's about 500 calories burned. A heavy lifting session, about 500 calories. Their total energy expenditure is going to be 3,000 calories if they do all of these activities up here. And for a 200-pound male, that's pretty good. So if you wanted to be in a 500 calorie deficit, you would need to eat 2,500 calories a day, which is already like a pretty good amount. But let's look at what happens when they do 20,000 steps. I don't know why. Oh, wait, no, this is still a 500 calorie deficit. You're right. When they do 20,000 steps in a day, their calorie budget goes up to 3,000 calories. That is a lot of calories and a lot of food, especially for someone who's like 200 pounds. So, as you can see here, the more steps that someone does, the more food that they can realistically eat while still maintaining a deficit. So you need to stop underestimating the power of walking here because walking, again, doesn't require fuel. It's just free calories that you burn, free fat that you burn, and more calories that you can eat. So for example, I am currently 156 to 157 pounds. Um, my total like my total calories that I eat every day is around 3,000 to 3,300. And most people will be like, "What the hell? How do you do that?" Because like 156, 157, that's pretty light. And it's because of all the movement that I do. So like my base metabolic rate is probably somewhere around 1,600 calories, I would say 1,700. So, but I also do 20,000 steps every day. I wrestle one time a week. I do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu 3 times a week. And I lift weights 5 times per week. So, as you can see, I am burning a lot of calories. And the activities that I'm doing are relatively low cortisol. Except for like all the combat sports, of course. I wouldn't say they're low cortisol, but they require like not that much fuel, if that makes sense. Unless I want to perform at like my absolute best. If I was trying to be a fighter, I would have more carbs during training, but I keep the carbs at an okay like level, just enough to keep me fueled, but not a crazy amount so that I'm like just like not burning any fat in general. I want to keep the carbs level low, so whenever I do go to those training sessions, I'm like still in like somewhat of a fat burning mode. So that's how I was able to go from 215 pounds all the way down to 155 pounds. But anyways, just to summarize all of my points, walking is optimal for testosterone and for fat loss. It can also add a big amount of calories to your calorie budget. If you don't walk at all throughout the day, you're gonna be limiting yourself to how much food you can eat, and you need a lot of food in order to have high testosterone. So like for testosterone, you need fat and cholesterol. How are you gonna fit all that food when you're only eating 1,500 calories a day? If you can get your calorie budget to 3,000 calories or not even 3,000, maybe like 2,500. That's more realistic for like most people, since most people will not be getting like 20,000 steps. But if you can get your calorie budget to 2,500 calories, including your calorie deficit, by the way, so making your BMR, or not BMR, sorry, your TDEE, making it around 3,000 calories, you're going to be giving yourself a lot of room to be able to eat a high amount of fat while still being able to fit in your protein and your carbs for performance. So, yeah, walk more. Everybody needs to be walking more. But anyways, if you wanted to ask me questions directly about this or about anything else, possibly give me some more video ideas on what I can post about, join my school community. The link is in the bio. The link is down below in the description. And yeah, it's free right now. I don't know how much longer it'll be free for, but definitely hop in there if you want to ask me any questions personally. And like and subscribe, and be sure to leave a comment on what you guys think about this. See you later.